Today's episode is sponsored by HireSuite. HireSuite CRM helps talent acquisition teams hire more people by automating your outreach and nurturing your talent pipelines, allowing your talent teams to be a lot more productive. If you haven't tried HireSuite, head to hiresuite.com and try it out for free.
Welcome to Crafty Sourcer. If you're looking for a raw, unfiltered podcast on all things sourcing in APAC, you've come to the right place. Grab a coffee or wine and join your host and other guests as we dive deep into the complex and ever-evolving world of sourcing, keeping you informed on insights, tools, and even at times, a healthy sourcing debate or two. Now, here's your host, Denise Pereira from Kaleidosource. Settle in and let's get crafty.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Crafty Saucer. I get excited each time I sit with a guest on this podcast, and today is no exception. Our guest today is another maven in the realm of AI driven recruitment strategies and prompt engineering development. They are currently a global talent sourcing manager who gets a real kick out of diving deep into AI, machine learning, and analytics. So let's get to the good stuff. Marrin, I'm so glad you could join us. Welcome to the show, and thanks for coming on board.
Thank you, and thank you for the lovely introduction. It sounds bigger than what I am, but lovely. Thank you.
Well, you've got to give credit where it's due, right? So, absolutely. Marin, we always start the show with a quick intro.
Yep.
So, for all those listeners who don't know who Marrin-Boyd Andrews is,
Yep.
tell us who MBA is and at what point in your career did you sort of realize sourcing is it for you?
Okay. Well, this could take up the whole podcast, but let's run with it. I tripped and stumbled into recruitment. We'll call it in the early part. The reason why I say tripped and stumbled, I had a career in DJing for 20 years. I had all my days free. And what I used to do is to occupy my time, I started to learn to code. So I learned Python and JavaScript and a lot of other different codes and R and all the rest of it. But I learned to write apps because iPhone had just come out and all these other lovely things. So I very quickly learned and dived into that. And off the back of that, I very quickly realized that I was making a bit of money extra there. So obviously I was on the right thing. However, when I wanted to get out of my career, out of DJing, and wanted to get back to having a normal life where I'm out where everyone else is out rather than I'm working and everyone else is out partying and playing, I decided to look at different careers. I went for a job through an agency, which I didn't even know they had recruitment agencies back then, but I went through an agency for a job for Benetton to do an Australasian manager. I was quite comfortable doing management of people, but thought I'd go for the job anyway. Anyway, I sat in there. I spoke to the recruiter, and the recruiter said, hang on a second, can you just hang on just 2 seconds? And she left the room, came back, the director came in, and he sat with me. He goes, right, so just tell me what you do. And I said, well, I've got this career in DJing and da-da-da. I said, I know I'm quite good in this management skills. He goes, all right, can I ask you something? He goes, can you leave this meeting now? He goes, I want you to go home, come back tomorrow. And he goes, I want you to tell me how you build a chair. And I was like, what is this guy on? Anyway, so I did it. And because I had a coding background, I made it animate. And I did it on like an animation. So the chair spun around, the leg pieces came on. Anyway, I got halfway through the presentation and the director goes, stop. Okay, great. That's good. I just wanted to know if you knew process. I was like, wow, God, this guy is off the Richter scale. Anyway, so I said, well, what are we talking about here? And he was going, look, I don't think you'd be great in the Benetton role. He goes, but have you ever thought about recruitment? I was like, what's recruitment? I know that you guys do it, but what is it? And he explained to me what it was. And he goes, well, look, I've got an oil and gas desk out there. He goes, and you can jump into it today. So one, I didn't know recruitment. Two, I didn't know what oil and gas was or anything about the industry. But he knew that I knew how to code. So I jumped into a recruiter desk. I lasted about 3 weeks as a recruiter because I had made about 2, maybe 3 placements in the 3 weeks. So very quickly he pulled me out of that seat, sat me behind every other desk. I think we had 18 desks running, banking, all the different sectors. And all I was doing was sourcing for them because I was writing code and trying to identify people that they needed. And I was able to harness really big data. So that's how I got into it. Like I said, really left field, but it's quite interesting journey. I could have gone probably into anything, but it seemed to work.
That's really interesting. So from DJ into, going for another role, but actually being tapped on the shoulder to do something different. So,
Yep.
I mean, when you look at that sort of transition, like, I'm sure there are no regrets there, but
None at all.
that's really fascinating. So thanks for
Mm.
sharing that, Marin.
Right?
In terms of, let's talk a little about, you've been around sourcing traps for a while now,
Yep.
pretty impressive background profile. What are some of the key differences that you see and that between what a recruiter does
Yep.
versus what a source's role is? And I say this provided the function is set up pretty well.
Correct. Yeah. How the function is set up does matter. Like, because I've worked in a lot of big companies, from mining to IT, with all these different areas, and they all have their own ways of going about it. But I think the main difference between the recruiter and the sourcer depends on that process and function they have in place. However, the principle doesn't change. Our job is to make the recruiter look great. Our job is to go and find that talent and say, here's 300 people that can do the job. Based off the data, these 6 look amazing. Send them on. They don't have to even advertise. They can just send it through to the leader or the clients, whatever not. And so we've identified, 6 people. And obviously from the back of that, you've got pretty fast turnaround. In saying it, look, the gap's getting closer. Recruiters are getting it, which is really lovely. They're actually diving in and trying things out. I do a lot of different talks, different places, and what I find is that I get a more attraction of people listening to what we're doing by recruiters more than sources themselves, because sources are doing their own way of doing things, right? So we say to all the recruiters the same thing: look, it's not biblical what we're telling you works, but take what works for you. Add it to jump into AI, jump into prompting, jump into bots, whatever you want to do, whatever spins your wheels. Run with it. So the gap's getting a lot closer, and that's quite enjoyable because I'm a massive fan for it. Just a quick story behind that. I am currently building my team. And when I was trying to build the team, I could not find someone that was interested in my space, because I either had recruiter that said, no, I don't want to do that, or I'm not interested in that, or I had developers that said, don't just pigeonhole me into talent. So I was trying to look for both. I was trying to get that marriage, but it's changing and it's merging and it's lovely. It's really good to see, because we're the last industry to uptake data in this space and the AI, but I think they're getting it. I think the scare factor, I try and take it out of a lot of the posts I do and all the rest of it. I just go, look, please don't think you're going to lose your job. It's not about that. It's about harnessing and attracting and adding to what you already do, I say it a lot in most of the talks I do, but, you won't lose your job to AI, but you may lose your job to someone using AI, right? So it's really important that people understand if they jump on board and get it, they're off.
There's 2 points that you've made that's actually really important. And one question back to you based on you're right. A lot of recruiters are now coming to the table and wanting to know more about sourcing. Do you think it's also because teams are being cut by halves right now, and
it is.
they're obviously taking a lot more workload on, and now with the whole Gen AI coming into play, people are like, hey, I need to come to the table, I'm going to get left behind. So there's 2 sides to that.
And I think where the marriage is getting even better is not also leaning so much on sourcing. It's more that they're understanding there's a partnership there. What we do in sourcing goes up and down the line. We could be talking with the leaders 3 months ahead. So we talk with the leaders 3 months ahead, and they go, here's our gaps. This is what's coming up. This is a critical role. We're a bit concerned about this role. We could have someone leaving the business. So we build that bench. So by the time the rec lands on the recruiter's desk, they've got all the leaders' notes. They've got the leaders already gone through our pipeline. They've identified the 6. They say, call them. I'll talk to any of those 6 in a heartbeat. So I think they're valuing that there's a partnership there. Before, sources were set up very differently. We were very separated from everybody. There was a lot of industries early on that saw us as coordinators, right? We'd sit behind the recruiter and just coordinate, make phone calls, and it's just not like that. It's a very different place. A lot of us are very quiet. Denise, I know you're one prefer to sit behind the scene and do what you do. But there's this lovely business delivery part of our work, and by us doing that early and not at critical, if we can sit in that future space, it just arms the recruiter with everything by the time that rec lands.
Your last point about, how functions used to be set up, where sources used to be sitting behind the recruiters, kind of gave me a bit of PTSD, because we've all worked as part of functions where it hasn't been set up properly, and recruiters have always felt like, hey, sources are here, they're here to, step on my feet, and there's, we're going to lose that element of control within our own process, whereas, there's no clear handoff points, etc. But that's all changing now, right? With AI there.
Yep.
there has to be clear responsibilities to begin with. And again, it
Yeah.
goes back to educating the recruiter and the recruiter
Yeah.
understanding the difference between what a sourcer's role is versus what a recruiter does. At the end of the day, we all have the same common objective for the business, right?
It's it, to build the talent within. And that's a really good point you make, because the best model that I've ever seen is where you have the recruiter still spearheading the work, right? There's nothing worse than a leader saying, oh, well, I've spoken to MBA and I'm talking to the recruiter, and the HRBP wants that information, and they're going, who am I talking to
Mm.
for this role that I'm working on? You know what I mean? So what we say to the leader is, look, our function is to support that recruiter that's supporting you. However, we want to be sitting in your meetings early. We want to be sitting and listening. Most meetings I go to with the leaders, it's not about us getting there and getting involved. We sit there and just listen to the gaps, listen to the pain, listen to what's happening, what's moving, what's coming up. So we can then go back and action stuff ahead of time. So by the time the leader says, "Hey, you know what? I do need that. I've got 3 roles open at the moment. Great. Well, here's that pipeline we did 4 months ago." And he goes, "Great." So within an hour, he can go through the names, send it straight to the recruiter, and they can start making phone calls. So yeah, it's very, very important, and that's probably the best model I've worked under.
And this is where knowing your data, knowing your market comes into
Yep,
play, right?
definitely.
On the A to Z of Talent podcast that you did with Andrea, you spoke about how you've experimented ideas with AI,
Yep,
analytics, predictive modeling. Now, there's no hiding behind the fact that A, you've been flying under the radar.
yep,
You're also a massive advocate for prompt engineering.
yep.
So, Marin, how have you used AI to significantly improve your sourcing process for you and your team? And have you seen any key outcomes of implementing AI or even just experimenting in any particular instance?
Yeah, cool. I'll just touch on your first point. I have been hiding under the radar, but not deliberately. A lot of the time in the industry, I would meet with leaders or companies, and they go, "But what do you do?" But what? But because they didn't understand the involvement. There's a lot more buy-in now, but it wasn't there for a long time. So I would post things. I get nothing. People going, "What is this guy talking about?" All the rest of it. But I've just found that that's all changed. The leaders understand the function a little bit better. To the AI piece, significantly has improved our industry. It is a tool that I call a 10-80-10. The reason why I call it that is the 10% is your hard work. This is the stuff you do before you talk to AI. So that's giving it context, giving it tone, giving it understanding, giving it outcome, giving it all the exemplars, all the things. And I'm happy to give a list of this later. But there's 5 or 6 key things you need to give AI. So that's not for AI to do your work. That's for AI to enhance and improve and change and provoke and think beyond what you're thinking about, to correct you, to give you things you hadn't thought of, all this lovely piece. And that's the 80. And the 10 is where you then refine it. And you go, based off what I want and what you've given me, this is my piece of work now, and that's what I'm going to do. AI is not to do your job. It's not the way it works. And I tell you now, you'd have to be a damn good prompt engineer to let it do your work if you were going to run it that way. You'll end up with wrong data. You'll end up with misrepresented data. You'll end up business making wrong decisions. All these key things if you let it do that. But the 10-80-10 seems to work. Look, you could probably even stretch it to a 20, 60, 20. You could probably split it that way. But realistically, the idea is that don't remove yourself. It's not to replace you. Otherwise, you will be out of a job. Because if you can just really let AI do it, it's gonna replace you. You're gonna go, well, the leader will go, well, I don't need you. I can just do it myself. Around the AI, the other part that is the game changer is the prompt engineering. I can't stress it enough. A lot of people get scared off by this title. An engineer is someone who creates. So just think of it like creative writing. So the best way to think of it is that if I've got the key things I need to give something to create something for me, just like if I had a team and I need them I need to lay out what the work is we've got ahead, AI is the same. You need to talk to it to give it exactly what you're after. And prompting is the answer. The lovely part about prompting is you can template it. So you can create a prompt for a particular role, and then you can have what they call variables in it. So just say I'm looking for a general manager of data and analytics. You can make that variable the data analytics GM role. So next time you go in, you can change that and then harness it and then run it again and run it again. I will say the best part about it is that you can improve them. Every time I've done a prompt, I end up writing 3 other prompts out of it. Because what happens is I'm running a prompt and that looks all great. Then it comes up with some other information. I go, well, that's actually quite cool. I'm going to add that to another prompt because that's going to be good for this. That happens a fair bit. The other part is that AI is very heavily becoming integrated in all part of the process. So I'll give you a big example. The process generally for us in sourcing is we use AI to understand the industry, right? So what's happening, who's the main players, all that lovely stuff that's out there, what are the other titles they could be sitting at, all that lovely stuff. We then create a prompt of what we want to do. We then, off that, create a bot and write a bot. So we've got bots that we use quite heavily, and we develop these to do the work for us. They just run in the background. Once we put all that right information into the bot, then we let the bot go and it's running it and pulling in the background. Once that's finished, we harness that into Excel, present that in Power BI, and that can all happen within like 2 to 3 hours. So it can run really fast, depending on the size of the search, right? But ideally, if you've got the prompt right and you've got the bot right and you're telling exactly what you're after, you can turn around pretty fast. So, and the back end of that is that AI has allowed us to present in a very short period of time. Whereas previously, as you know, if you're going to go the long road on that, that could take 2 or 3 weeks. Especially some of the there's a lot of large sourcing companies out there, and they'll ask for a retained search will take 3 or 4 months. I don't know how that happens. I don't know how it takes 3 or 4 months, but that is not where we sit. That's not traditionally what I've found is possible. Oh, sorry. One more question. One more answer to your question. The companies that hold this talent is usually where we sit and where the AI meets. And the reason why I say this is that AI now can give you the ability to do a lot more than just, write a Boolean string, find out titles, all the rest of it. We're getting closer now. We're sitting at January 2022 for live data, and talent doesn't move fast enough in these companies for that data to be far wrong. So the lovely part about it is that you've got web access in GPT now. So you can pull not only the companies, the locations they sit at, you can pull all the titles they've got in a particular function, how many they have in that function, and then identify, well, I know that this company's got 6 people that are doing that role. I'm going to, 1, go find them. I'm going to 2, pull that data. And I'm 3, going to reach out to them, because that's our competition, or that's where I can grab it. So that's the lovely part about it, is that you can complete a full story for the leaders of where we pulled data from, because the 3 areas should be always advertising for brand, sourcing for passive, and then your internal database. And that way, then you're developing people. They're the 3 areas you need to be in, but AI gives you the bigger picture and present it back.
When AI first came out, it kind of reminded me when cell phones first came out. Yeah. And it reminded me of a story of my dad. Obviously, the older generation were not used to mobile phones. And this is the story of my dad. When he first had his first mobile phone, and this is actually a pretty funny story. So when his phone, he actually got a text message, and I was with him, and he put his cell phone to his ears, and he's like, hello, and he's like, oh, nobody's answering. And I'm like, Dad, that was a text message. Yeah. So AI is pretty similar. So people who are used to a lot of manual work and inputting a lot of data by themselves and, taking weeks and weeks, some of them are going to struggle if they don't come to the party. And that's the beauty of what you're mentioning about prompt engineering is. And I would recommend people that if you can, there's so many free courses on prompt engineering, even on Udemy. Go and learn about it. It's all around formula. It's all around instruction, context, inputting data, outputting. There's frameworks, there's formulas, again, garbage in, garbage out, 0 shot prompting, few shot prompting, understand what it does. It can be very overwhelming with a lot of information, but once you start using it day in, day out, like Marrin, you would know advanced data analysis, right? So I did a bit of a demo around just, candidate outreach, just putting someone's LinkedIn profile in there and just getting a summarized context for outreach as well. So it's a bit of a game changer. It's really how you want to use it and what context you want to use it. You can absolutely take a lot of advantage of the stuff that's out there. Now, Marrin, in terms of with what you've been doing, in your experience, what are some of the most innovative and unexpected ways in which you've applied AI or where it's being applied to talent sourcing today? You mentioned Boolean searches.
Yes.
Now, we all know with Boolean as an example, there's a hit and miss with ChatGPT. You have to
Yep.
further prompt it. Actually, ChatGPT reminds me of being like a lawyer in a courtroom. Like, ChatGPT is on the stand and you're constantly like asking it questions to
Yeah.
get,
Yeah.
to get to where
Ding,
you
ding.
need to get to.
Correct.
So tell me about some of the innovative sort of ways that you've been using it that's kind of reshaped your thinking around that, hey, we can't be using these sourcing practices anymore.
Yeah, sure. So first, it allows us to identify talent that is not in the common denominator places. So it allows you to identify talent, say, off org chart structures, of corporate presentations. If you're sitting in IT, GitHub, and all those other places. So I'm just saying, predominantly out of your Seek and your LinkedIn and your go-tos. So that's the first thing. The other thing is that what I've found is quite innovative about it, and it's a little bit back to what you said around trying to learn it, is it can teach you, right? So you can be asking a lot of questions and going, oh, why am I not getting the right answers, and why is it not giving me the right strings? Ask AI, say, how can I improve this? You can do it. You even go a step further. Write me a prompt that'll give me the answer that I'm trying to request for you. It'll write the prompt for you. And then you can use that prompt again and again, because ChatGPT will tell you what it needs to give it so it can do it for you. So that's where it becomes really innovative. And I will tell you, if for those that do get into it, it's a massive rabbit hole. You will go down a rabbit hole, and it's totally enjoyable. You maybe shouldn't spend as much time as you're doing it, but it's a massively wonderful rabbit hole, because off the back of one conversation, you're realizing information it can give you that maybe for another project, or maybe for another role, or maybe a leader's been asking for, only because you haven't asked it that way before. I mean, and you haven't coded it right, Your tone, like I said, your tone's important. Exemplars, which is just a crazy name for examples, giving context to it, all those lovely pieces are very, very important. If the people have those 5 things that you need to actually create a good prompt, it'll always give you close to what you're after. Like I said, not exact, but close to enough for you to run away with, and then go, okay, now I'm going to write another prompt knowing that, or show me a better prompt that I can do. I've written this prompt, improve it,
And that's really good, because that's reverse engineering.
Yeah.
Because we are predominantly, our job is to prompt it and prompt it well,
Yeah,
but we're also
that's
asking it to sort of reprompt it as well. That's so true, because with the information we are inputting into it, we are training it, but it's also training us in a way to sort
Yep.
of further enhance our thinking around certain
Yep.
sort of topics as well. So,
Yeah.
and Baron, with data privacy being the biggest concern, right?
Yes.
So we have open source large language models. You can
Yep.
absolutely deploy them. The data comes in, it's not going out, which is, I think, probably the most key and crucial point versus ChatGPT when it comes to data privacy.
Yep. 100%.
ChatGPT is on the internet, so
Yep.
we don't know what they're doing with our data other than continuing to
That's right.
train on them as well.
Yep.
What challenges or ethical considerations have you encountered when integrating AI or experimenting with AI when it's come to sourcing, and how do you think someone should be addressing them?
Yeah, really good question, and something I'm really passionate about. I've worked quite closely with legal teams in a lot of the companies I've worked with around getting the GDPR right, and a lot of that requires the company to change a lot of their privacy statements, or the rest of it, to say, oh, look, your data will be kept on this CRM, but it may be also used on third parties. So the companies are even struggling with this. The most important thing is make sure it's public data for a starter. So no deep diving into a platform, even if you're paid for it. That's not legal way to do it. You've got to be sitting purely in public data, and harnessing it from that way. Now, in saying that, there's a plethora of public data out there. You've just got to find it and have bots that can actually access it and pull it in for you, because you don't want to be sitting there doing it line by line yourself. You want to have it that automated. The other GDPR thing that's very, very important is where you're keeping it as well. You can hold the data and pull it if it's public and all the rest of it. However, just realize where you're sharing it to. And the reason why I say that is that in talent, we're in a bit of a trusted position within the business. We see our internal data, we see passive data, we see, people that have applied, we see all that lovely stuff. And it's very easy for that data to be shared with a leader that's going to get rogue on you and start making phone calls. And they go, how'd you get my number? And all this lovely stuff, right? So you can end up in a real awful situation. The other part to keep in mind is that there's global laws around how long you can keep data. Globally, it's about 12 months. In Europe, however, you can only hold data for 6 months. Right, so it's a little bit different there. They're a lot tighter on it. That's all because of the Google misrepresentation of people's data, and they found that they were keeping and harnessing the data. I think even Meta got caught up in a bit of that as well. So all the laws changed in Europe and all the rest of it. The other thing I'll just mention about the GDPR piece is we need to make sure that we are eliminating anything that can identify somebody, right? There's nothing worse than someone saying, how'd you get my name? And but we can see it on public data. But sometimes you've got to respect that, people put stuff out there that's maybe for one platform. It may not be for the other. However, they have talent. You go, I want to know you. I want to know more about you. You're a great developer. You're only on Instagram and all the rest of it. So sometimes you just got to keep that in mind that, with data, we can pull images, we can pull, so you can show diversity, you can show all these lovely things and all the rest of it, but just make sure that it is coming from a public place. If they're prepared to share it publicly on social media, which is a great place to harness data, by the way, just make sure that is a public image and you haven't dived further into a platform to get other images and all the rest of it. You can find yourself in a bit of a situation that you don't want to be in.
That's actually a really good point that you made about public versus private as well. Marrin, last question for you. And what are some of your favorite AI tools that you've been using? And maybe name the top 3 and what do you use them for?
My favorite AI tools?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, okay. I've got a list that's probably, 50 long, because every time I find something, I think it's quite great. The first one is obviously ChatGPT. That's the go-to. I will say, and this sort of leads back to a little bit about what you just asked about with privacy, but there's a new ChatGPT offline app that's come out called Faraday. I'm not sure if you know about it, but it allows you to control the data and still use ChatGPT large language models. So what it is, you can download the model itself and it runs locally off your PC. And what they do is they update that, and then you can get the updates of the large language model, but you use it locally. So it stops you from having data leaks and information you've got getting out and all the rest of it. It stops things like if you're using a PD as an example to get the data to understand the role a little bit better to use AI. Keeps it completely offline, so that's quite a good app. Another app which I just found yesterday, and I don't know where it is. I think it's called Hey You. Is a very good one if you want to. If you're not very comfortable putting your face on a lot of things, you can use an image, and this completely animates you to the point where I use it for team training. So the team can. So what I'm doing is I'm developing one at the moment where I'm putting through a training model for them, and it's not me; it's a photo of me that talks, but it looks very, very animated. So it's a really, really good one. What else is out there? There's so many. Honestly, if I could put up on the screen, there is a massive, massive list of it, and I tend to dive where I predominantly have got a hit from before. So I tend not to step outside of it, but I do find that AI is going so fast, things burn out just as fast. So you go, well, that's an idea, but they're not doing great anymore, and there you go. So I'll go and find another one. A great tool to find great tools is Alternatives 2. I don't know if you guys use it, but it's a great tool. So if you find a platform that does it for you, but maybe not exactly right, type that into ChatGPT, Alternatives 2, and it'll give you a plethora of other apps that are doing the same thing.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you say that, because I think what is it that every week or 2 weeks you hear about like 200 plus sort of bloody AI plugins coming out. So it's so hard to keep up with it. But I think this is what we are constantly saying in the sourcing community is don't just jump on the bandwagon because everybody else is doing it. Find out what is your problem statement, what are you trying to solve for, and then work away from there. And you don't have to have 10 plugins, for 5 different tasks that you're doing.
Yeah, and there's a lot of tools that also complement AI that are not AI, right? So we use a lot of multi-highlights and a lot of all these other Chrome extensions because when we pull the data or be able to source the data or write a string to go and look at all the data, there's tools out there that you just type in exactly what you want to see and it just color codes it all for you. So you go, well, she's great because she's hit 16 colors there and this person's only got 3 of the colors. So you know the best talent you can identify. So there's a lot of great tools just in Chrome extensions that complement AI, and they all work because AI is all run out of your browser, right? So if it's in there, you can color code the whole thing and give up the answers you want. The data is really important for when you're trying to understand further about a particular role. So just say you pulled a lot of data, and you'd have this offline. So you just say you pulled a whole lot of profiles publicly, and you say who's the best and why are they the best? And tell me why you chose them and rank them and da da da. And all of a sudden you see your list of 300 turn into the top 10 and it's telling you why the top 10. So the data's talking without any bias. And that's lovely stuff that you could do with the AI tools.
Have you used Perplexity AI?
I did until ChatGPT opened up their own app. So I was using Perplexity a fair bit. I saw you talking about it actually on LinkedIn. I was playing around with the ChatGPT.
Oh, was that Poe? Was that Perplexity?
I'm not sure. I thought it was an AI tool. You were talking to it.
Poe, yeah.
Yeah. So Perplexity does the same sort of thing, but what we tend to use it for now is I very rarely type now. I just talk to it. And when ChatGPT released the app, I went, oh, this is great. So I don't use Google search anymore. I just click that on and start talking to it. Sometimes I've even left it running, and I'm doing other things and I'm going into meetings and it's just answering stuff that I'm talking about at the same time, and I can go back and look and go, oh, yeah. It's answering on that level. So it's the lovely features about it. The other good thing about AI, Perplexity, I think does it now as well, but ChatGPT came out with it. You can use multi attachments now. So you can grab the PD, you can grab a document from the company, you can grab your Excel file and load it all in and saying, who's the best candidates for that role, and all the rest. So it's quite lovely now. You can get 3 or 4 files in there.
I was doing this because I was trying to do this business development thing for my business. And what I did was I downloaded all my data from LinkedIn and I put it into advanced data analysis. And I was like, I want to just see head of TA people based in Australia in this specific location. And it was accurate as I was actually very impressed. And the good thing is it works really well with the more data. It actually works better with that versus small amounts of data. So I was really impressed with that. So I was talking to someone yesterday around them because they do a lot of volume hiring. And I said, look, if you can, use your ATS data and input that. And
that's right.
If you'll have tagging capabilities in there, you can start tagging people and be like, okay, if this person is not right for this role, based on what we've input in that sheet, where 100%. Else can we put them? So there's lots of things that we can be thinking about.
There's a massive amount of untouched areas, right? Because of AI now. I'll give you an example. Obviously not mentioning the company, but there was a company I was working for and we had a space in the org chart that we needed to fill. And we were able to look at all of the data that sat below it of the other people that were potentials for that role. And the data was able to tell us who would be the best for that role in that org chart based off the data that they've got in the CRM. Like I said, totally locked off, but it could talk to it on that level. So then you also could say, well, what is the challenges that person would face going into that role? What would be their successes? Why would they shine in? What would be their go-to? How would they act in that sort of role, but coming from that role? Lovely stuff, right? And there's all these areas that people are just starting to think about, which they haven't even tapped into because we're only looking at the sourcing, right? We haven't even looked at that, but the business is looking at that.
Don't work for the AI, make AI work for you, right?
So that's it. Yeah.
I was going to say make AI great again, but you know what? That pun doesn't fit in there. But
no, it doesn't. Marrin, you haven't been caught.
Marrin, this has been fantastic. I think lots of people are going to have so many key takeaways from this, not just because, AI is the hot topic right now, but people are struggling in terms of, hey, how do I wrap my head around AI right now? But what do I need to do to be effective in my role?
Yeah.
so that I'm visible, so my work is visible, and I'm doing some really good work out of it as well. So, Marrin,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
My
And,
pleasure.
I'm sure I'm going to see you next year at the Sourcing Summit in Sydney in April,
Yeah.
hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely going to get down to it, I think.
All
Yes,
right.
absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah. Well,
Awesome.
thank you so much.
Thank
It's
you,
been great.
Marrin. And thanks, everyone. And stay crafty. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode, and we'll be back next week with another exciting episode. If you found this valuable, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. That helps others find the show, and we greatly appreciate it. Once again, happy sourcing and stay crafty. Until next time.